Welcome to Build Out with Jim Kunkel, your go-to broadcast for learning more about business in the real world. Your host, Jim Kunkel, who is an accomplished professional in business development, sales, and marketing, and is a technical content creator along with being a rising influencer on LinkedIn. On Build Out, you'll get the latest information and knowledge from subject matter experts from across the globe. Okay, let's get this Build Out broadcast started. And here's your host, Jim Kunkel.
Welcome to Build Out. I'm Jim Kunkel, and joining me today is Matt Denny. He's a co-founder of DenLyn Group, and also, too, I should say, AKA Mohawk. How are you doing today, Mr. Mohawk?
I'm doing great, Jim. I'm pumped to be here. And yeah, I guess they call me Mohawk Matt. I don't know why, but it stuck. So there we go.
It makes sense. It makes sense. Hey, Matt, before we get into our conversation regarding what is brand marketing, could you provide your professional background for the viewers and also, too, talk about DenLyn Group as well?
Definitely. So as Jim said, my name is Matt Denny. A lot of people know me as Mohawk Matt across my world, which is the Department of Defense kind of innovation space, where I've been. So related to branding and marketing, I've been in and out of that for almost 20 years. I just didn't know I was in it for a long time. And so, but then in 2008, I joined the Marine Corps, and then I went from active duty Marine to Navy civilian up until last fall. And so I have about 13 years of Department of Defense military government experience. And a lot of that was related to the branding and marketing. I did innovation things and web development, other things as well. But for me, it always came back to the branding side. It always came back to helping people find their voice, to the podcasting, to the people call it marketing. And in the government, it's not called marketing. In the government, it's called public affairs, public relations. And that's what I was in the Marine Corps. I was a photojournalist in the Marine Corps, and I did the public affairs thing, which anyone else, I mean, it does have the element of like public relations, but a lot of it is storytelling. And that's really where I fell in love with. In high school, I was not the writer. My brothers and my mom did all my English homework. Like, statute of limitations is up. I already have my degree. I can admit that now. I paid my little brothers to do most of my homework because it was not my thing. But then when I got to the Marine Corps and discovered writing from a storytelling perspective, that's where I fell in love with it. That's where I fell in love with the art of storytelling. And what I started to learn was branding and marketing. And early on out of high school, I worked for concert promoters. I gave away free energy drinks through parties and stuff and concerts across Utah. But I never fully understood that I was doing marketing. I was just doing what I needed to do for a buck at the time. I had like 3 jobs. And so it became more and more, it just coming full circle. I never went to school for it officially until the last couple of years where I started learning more of the official terms. I just kind of fell into it. And so then after doing my government career, after many years, we decided I kind of want to get out on our own and try our own thing and see if it works. Because if you've ever worked around or in the government, they're always hiring. So I can get a job back. If this doesn't work out, I can go back there, I guess. But as we got out, we didn't fully know we were going to start our own company, which is now DenLyn Group. Kind of thought, I'm going to go work for a marketing agency or this company or this. And then I started to learn more and more that I am not marketing. I am not what companies are looking for when they're looking for marketing. I am more of a brander in the branding side, which we're going to go into. And so after some hiccups, and our company does a couple other things, but the main focus really is the brand development with the goal of credibility building, with the goal of the clients we work with. My goal is for them to know when they go to an event, a conference, a podcast, everyone in their space knows who they are already. They don't have to sell because they know who they are. They don't have to make these things up because they've established themselves as an expert in their community or as a known thought leader in their community, because that's all everyone's trying to do, which we'll go into more from the branding versus marketing later. But that's what DenLyn Group is. I founded it with my wife, so life partner and business partner. I just have the pretty hair. She's really the brains behind most things. But yeah.
Yeah, as a storyteller, you tell an awesome story. So, and I encourage everyone to check out, Matt Mohawk or Mohawk Matt. I'm sorry. Check out the content that you put out on LinkedIn. So, everyone should follow you and check you out as well. Let's go ahead and kick off our conversation related to what is brand. Traditional marketing is telling people, a story, telling what a product, a service is. But when you leave the room, the brand is what's in their mind. That's what kind of sticks to you, your product, your service, or your company. What is really the definition of brand?
So before we do that, I'm going to ask you a question. We're going to do it right here.
Mm-hmm.
So when you've gotten the mail before, right, from your house, what do you do when you first get the mail?
Well, I kind of go through it to see what I want to keep and what I want to put in the recycle.
And what do you throw in the recycle?
All the marketing material.
Done. Episode's over. that is, we don't realize that we are throwing away marketing every single day, but yet as companies or people, organizations, we make those same things. I was just at a conference last week and everyone had marketing materials everywhere. And I use that same example. I was like, everything you have on your tables, I would throw away. I wouldn't let it in my house. So why do you think I'm going to put it in my backpack now? And that is traditional marketing. That is what it's been, is that what you tell people your story is, what you tell people about your company, information you put out. And it's changed with digital things over the years and magazines. And I'm a huge fan of the Mad Men TV show, old school style marketing. And so speaking to the brand, as you said it perfectly, everyone has a brand. People will ask me, well, I don't have a brand. Yes, you do. Your brand may be you don't return emails. Your brand may be you're a great friend. You're great to go drink with. You're really good at your job. You're unreliable when you pick people up, or you're always late. Like, that is your brand. Brand is just a fancy word for reputation. Your brand is what people say about you, whether you're there or not. That is, so everyone has a brand. It's just, do you spend time building your brand and making sure your brand is clear? So I'm going to quote something I can't take credit for. I get from my buddy Steve Sims, which is, there's two in life. The biggest C in life is cancer. The biggest C in business is confusion. And so the biggest mistake you can do with your brand is confuse people because you're not paying attention to it, because you are not aware of what it's perceived as. And that's not done just through marketing. There is brand marketing and targeting, but it's not doing the traditional marketing that you're going to go throw away. Like, I don't want a client to spend money working with me that their stuff's just going to get thrown away. Like, and a brand is more than the material. A brand, a lot of the times, will be considered like, oh, we got our branding guide and it's our colors and it's our feeling and our vision and our mission. And yes, those are part of your story and those are part of your brand, but that is not you. That is not what your brand says when you're not there. That's what you say about your brand. I'll pause there.
No, so having a crystal clear brand, how important is that to your credibility? Or if it's not only you as a professional, let's say if it's your professional brand, but if it's a product or service, how important is it when it comes to building credibility to have that clarity?
Well, it's the number one thing people are not doing, because the influencer market has changed the game. Whether you like influencers or not, they are real and they have changed the way that we process information. People want to buy something because they believe in it, because they connect to it. If it's a product, they don't want a pair of pants because it's the best pair of pants. They want a pair of pants because their celebrity or their friend or someone they follow bought them, wore them, told them about them. It's not about being, and this one comes, I listen to a lot of people, so I attribute them. This one comes from Grant Cardone. It's not about being the best. It's about being the best known. And so, one, you got to get your message out there, but then how do you get people to connect to you? And a lot of the things that stop, you mentioned the content that I put out online. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't do that because they get stuck on making it perfect, on making that perfect brand. It's got to just be just right. But they just got to start getting information out there, because the worst brand is the one that doesn't exist, is the one that you don't feed, is the one that people don't know about. Your product can be incredible, but if nobody knows about it and if nobody can relate to it, it's a world of relation now. Nike changed this the past couple of years with their commercials and how they've been doing. You're not seeing like the logo everywhere. You're seeing a story. You're seeing people running. You're seeing people having fun. My favorite rebrand is two. This was about 7 years ago, and they changed the game. They were the first ones to do it, and then everybody followed, and it was Samsung. And it was their appliances commercial. And it was Thanksgiving, and they did all this. You had all these things, and you had grandma knocking on the door, kids running around, spilling stuff in the kitchen. They didn't talk about Samsung. They didn't say this is the best oven. It cooks in the fastest temperature. You can check it on your phone, which it all does. And that's the old ways of doing it. In the infomercial way, they just told the story. They just showed you the story of a beautiful Thanksgiving dinner happening with the chaos, with the fun, with the love and the family. And so that's where everything started to shift as far as like commercial branding and marketing, is everyone started following that. My favorite of all time is Orkin. If you know Orkin, they are a bug killing company. They are that's what they do. They're exterminators. And in the past, it was you had a huge bug on top of their van, or they'd have these like commercials like hunting down a bug in the hallway. But when they changed it a couple years ago, I didn't even know it was Orkin. You can't even tell it's Orkin for the first 30 seconds, and it's only 31 seconds long. It's these kids running outside in their front yard, and they're just running through the grass, and it's just showing them having fun. And at the very end, wouldn't your house be great without bugs? That's it.
Yeah, and I think with brands, in the modern economy you have a lot of competition. So you really don't want to go out there and have a brand that basically screams, hey, we've got the same thing they have, or, we got the same thing, but ours is a lot less expensive. And when I think of companies that really kind of set themselves out there, the first one that comes to mind for me is BASF, where their message for years was always that we don't make great products, we make materials that go into great products. And so that set them ahead because their competition is huge. There are a lot of material supplying companies that make materials that go into great products. And so by them pointing that out, it really helped to differentiate, kind of set them ahead of everybody else in the side. So how important it is that when you're dealing with a lot of competitive brands out there to really have that unique, kind of like what you were kind of covering earlier, that unique aspect of a brand?
It's critical. It's life or death for a company. It's the difference between someone buying from you and buying from the person that's next to you. As I mentioned, I was at a conference last week. Perfect example. Everyone was saying, oh, we have this. And I talked to a few people. Everyone had the same product.
Yeah.
Everyone had the same exact thing, and all their flyers had the same words. They used the same taglines. They were may have just been manipulated a bit. And so I helped. We had a client before that event, and this is what I told them. They said, how do we stand out? How do we be different than everyone else selling what we sell? I said, well, first, go to this event not in a suit, because everyone's in a suit. So it's critical to stand out and be different. And that be different may not be that your product's different. Your product may be the same. And so that's what people get stuck in. That's that cycle of like, well, no, this one's better. This one's cheaper. Stop focusing on your product. Focus on you. There's the whole like B2B, sell business to business, but it's all C2C. It is all human to human contact. That is how everything's done. I know AI and ML is becoming a thing, and we're getting to the robotic things, but we're not there. We're not like, I still have to click buy on my Amazon cart until my phone does that for me automatically, because it guesses my trends, which it's pretty much close to doing now. It's still a human to human connection. And so that's how you stand out with your brand, is focus on the human side. Focus on how you're connecting. Your product's going to be the same as 1,000 products out there. And that doesn't mean don't do it. That means do it. Because if you just gave up and said, well, someone else has this, well, then we would only have one kind of cell phone, one kind of car, one kind of computer. So it's good to go have multiple options, but give people a reason to connect to you, not your product, because your products are all going to – there's so many products out there that are going to do the same exact thing. I can go buy a new car. The cars are going to get me from here to here, and it's great. But I want a car that speaks to me. I want a car that tells my story, that has the features I want. So find a way as personally or professionally to connect to people. And you do this really well, Jim, in things I've seen. You are you. I've only known you for a few weeks through some collaborations we've done with another group, but everything I see about Jim is Jim. It's not confusing to me of what your brand is, what your voice is, what your style is, and that's the most important thing people can do, is be yourself. Even if you're working for someone else, people are still interacting with you. So be you, and everything else will come from it. And as a company, be that company. Be what that voice is. From a brand perspective, a lot of people mess up and focus on the product, like you said.
Yeah.
And this is what it does. But from a brand side, focus on the results.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on what it creates for them. Like if that product like this is water. You don't see commercials about water making your white blood cells feel good and making your muscles good. No, it's about how it tastes, how it feels, how you like it, where the mountain spring that it came from. It's giving you something to imagine and connect to. And that's the beauty of a good brand, is that you immediately connect to it. And that's the beauty of a bad brand, is that you're immediately repulsed by it.
Yeah, I always like, focus on the and it's great to deliver information, but to your point, that gets you back into that marketing material information type of, and people really are connected more to the personality, how it makes them feel, how it appears, and things like that. So, let's move on to, what is brand marketing? Earlier you were talking about the personal brand, but, I view, and I think most people in the industry view, that there's three types of brands. There's a company and corporation brands. There's the product brands that you were talking about just a minute or so ago, and then the personal brands. How different are all three of them, and how similar are all three of them when it comes to brand marketing?
So it's kind of like the Russian nesting dolls.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be a trigger for some because of what's going on in the country, or in the world. But it's how everything's connected. Most people live their life like that nesting doll, where their company is their brand, their product is their brand, and they tie so much into it. Like most people say, like when you go to a party or an event, hey, tell me about yourself. They start with work. So you may not realize it. You are telling your company's brand by talking about them so much. And so they are very same, and they are very different. They're very connected, but they all have a different purpose. The company corporation brand is really focused on the big company. And in a bad way, they don't care about you. That company is going to do what's best for the company. And from a branding perspective, they're going to do what's best for them as branding, as making money, as a thing. And they will create new and get rid of products that don't feed to that. They will hire new and fire people that don't feed to that. So that company and corporation is always going to have that big hierarchy thing from a brand perspective. From a product perspective, so you have Nike, because I talked to them earlier. So you have them, where you've got the brand of Nike is just do it, is athleticism. It is like, it speaks athletic ability because that's what they've created. It speaks lately, they've shifted that brand as a whole company to speak to equality, to speak to connecting to the world, and to be available for anyone. That's how they've shifted their brand as a company, as a corporation. Now the product brand, Nike, has basketball shoes, and they have soccer shoes, and they have football cleats. They are all going to follow their company brand, but they're all going to have a different purpose. They all serve a different market. And so while they feel that nesting doll they spoke to, that hierarchy, and they speak to equality, and they speak to athleticism, they're going to target those specific communities. And that's the beauty of having the separation between the company and the product brand. So you can take and target those. And then you're going to go to the personal brand. And now we're going to talk about the biggest Nike sponsored person ever, Michael Jordan. So he has his personal brand of Michael Jordan being the best basketball player of all time, being the guy that you can rely on, being everybody that wants to be like Mike. So that is his brand that he created, that then he associated with his basketball shoes and an Air Jordan, which is also associated with the company Nike. And so they all serve each other, but they're all individual, if that helps answer that question.
Yeah, it definitely does. And it kind of feeds into, the next part of the conversation I want to have with you, which is, when you're looking at brand marketing strategy and the channels, the three types are digital, social, and then what you just talked about is the collaborations. When you're looking at these different channels, you want to develop a mix, and that's going to be important. Having those three, you could speak a little bit, if you could speak a little bit about those three, but is there any above and beyond those three that maybe I didn't even think about for our conversation that you'd want to talk about as well?
Yeah. So just to be clear, the social, are you talking social media or are you talking social human?
Well, for me, I would say both, because a lot of times you're talking about different type of social interactions. Sometimes these campaigns can really launch some grassroots type of conversations that go, more human to human or collectively as groups. But then also too, with the rise over the number of years here with social media, it's such a major impact and driver when it comes to brand.
Yes, perfect. So I love that. And so what I'm going to use. Actually, I'm going to use podcasting as my example for the three. First so podcasting, is a digital form of speaking on a stage. It's a digital form of an interview. It's a digital, and whether that's with video like we're doing now, whether it's audio, because podcasting has become kind of a confusing term on what a podcast is, but the form of broadcasting where you're interviewing someone digitally, that is part of, so we'll take a podcast. Part of your branding marketing is actually recording that and having that information and putting it out on podcast channels. That is the digital aspect of it. You're recording it digitally and you're also putting it out to the podcast world. The podcast community is not social media. So now you've got your podcast recorded and now you use social media to push it out. And so now that's part of your first branding strategy for your digital of the podcast is to record it. Is to put it online, put it where it needs to be digitally, using the tools like we're using now. And then the second piece to your 1, 2, 3, that social side. So now let's add the social side, social media of your podcast. So how do we put your podcast out there? There's the physical social, which is like last week at a conference I was at. I was handing out stickers to my new podcast for the DoD world. And so I was like actually telling them person to person, one at a time. But then there's the more powerful side, the social media side. And that's the taking this episode we're doing right now and cutting that into clips, cutting that into quotes, making a screenshot and posting that on your LinkedIn, your Instagram, your Twitter, your YouTube, and saying, hey, go here, because you're using that to drive them to something. You're using that as a teaser in that you're using it just like a shirt you would wear. So marketing was big for T-shirts and still is. You wear a shirt, people can know where to go find it. That's what your social media branding is for your podcast. As this example I'm doing, is you are taking that, putting it out there, and pulling people towards you, whether it's your website, in this case, the podcast. Number 3, the collaboration. Another beautiful example right now. You and I collaborating, you interviewing me will now get me into your audience and you into my audience. Yeah. That's the beauty of podcasts. That's the beauty of collaborations is the best. Like I spoke to Michael Jordan and Nike. I don't think they could ever have a better collaboration than that because the things they did for each other, people will say, oh yeah, sure, Nike paid Michael Jordan a lot of money. Yeah. But do you understand who Michael Jordan is? Anybody could have paid him a lot of money. What he did for them and what they did for him went back in that circle. And that's what's happening now in this collaboration for this podcast. Since that's the example I'm using is I am being able to share my opinion of branding and marketing to your audience. And then now when I share it out, when this episode launches, I get to share your podcast and your things to my audience. So the collaboration where we're both benefiting from the conversation.
Yeah, I like for example, you were talking about with Michael Jordan, let's say 50 years from now, I know he's a little older than what I am, but 50 years from now, let's say he passes on. That's going to be one of the first things that probably most people will lead in a news article about him or on the TV news and things like that. But when we talk a little bit about with the podcast, podcast, you think about it, roughly maybe 15, maybe getting closer to 20 years. And I remember that early on in podcasts, people said, hey, this is going to be short-lived. It's not going to, and it's still podcasts are so impactful today. And then also to your point, when it comes to, like, for example, with my professional brand, for me, LinkedIn has been a big platform for me to rise my influence and then also my brand. But video, doing pretty much a podcast that's video. And to your point, what I like about the ability with video, especially what we're doing right now, we can strip out the audio, have an audio podcast. We can do the clips. We can take the text from this and make a blog, or we can put it into a newsletter, or we could do an article on it. There's so many things we can do. And that really is impactful to brand. And you take one activity and you make it into a multiplier, which I find absolutely outstanding and amazing. So let's go ahead and let's kind of wrap things up regarding, why is branding important? Most of the time, we don't get the opportunity to meet people physically, to be at every conference, to be in every boardroom, to be in every office setting or meeting with people and things like that. So the benefit of having a brand is really doing that for us, to get out there and to really promote our company, our service, our product, or us professionally. And when you look at branding, what are some of the things that you recommend to your clients on how they can get their message out to the masses?
Start talking about yourself. It is one of the most uncomfortable things to do. As you know, as anyone does anything online, that anyone puts themselves out there, it is never easy to start talking about yourself if you've never done it. But that is the only way that you are going to do that. And it doesn't have to be, hey, look at me, I'm cool.
Yeah.
We collaborated on another project about a month ago, which brought us to a connection to each other. You were looking for people to talk about this topic, so we connected even more. So that in itself is my helping my brand being on your show, not because I am saying, hey, look at me, because I found a way to collaborate with someone, because I found So that's the biggest thing first is understanding what your brand is or what you want it to be. And if you don't know, just start. Don't wait. Don't make it the perfect color, the perfect title, the perfect thing. Just start. Your brand will tell you. You'll start to realize what you're doing. When we started DenLyn Group a few months ago, we had like 7 things that we did because we were like, because all of our experience, my wife's and mine, we could do all of these things, and it was so confusing. No one knew what we did because they're like, well, yeah, we do this and this and this and this and this. Because I was like so focused on like, yeah, but I'm like, I'm strong. I can do all these things. And I got to make sure people know that I'm multi-dimensional and like a Swiss Army knife. But nobody was talking to us. No one was taking that next step. Once we gained clarity and started offering 1 or 2 things, everyone started paying attention. So it'll come. So don't wait. Like we had tons of conversations, and I started hearing myself speak. I was like, I sound like an idiot because I don't know what even I do. And so it's finding that clarity, which can, if you don't know, just start and it'll start to weed itself out, and then you adjust. A rebrand, people are so afraid of like rebranding. I rebrand all the time. I mean, I think I'm always going to have a Mohawk, and that's what really stuck, especially when I had the Mohawk. Here's something else that happened too, is I ended up on the side of a NASCAR. So that brand is that collaboration that we spoke to earlier, completely different than my normal audience, but it forced me to rebrand just a little bit to reach that audience. And so when you're starting with your brand, start having conversations, know what you want it to be, and make sure it's what you want it to be and not what everyone else wants you want it to be. Because that's the biggest thing, is we lose sight of what we really want because we look at everybody else. And then
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, when you think about it, you're building that clarity, but also too, you need to instill trustworthiness, and you have to build that reliability. That, listen, I want to do business with Matt, or I want to work with Jim Kunkel, or product A or product B. That's super important. And with a lot of companies and organizations, what they're trying to do, they need to be able to set themselves aside of their competition to make sure that they are telling their story that shows this is why we're different. Without saying it, they basically do it through that imaging, through that, really the perception. and that changes everything. Shifting that perception, providing customers and prospects something that they can truly believe in.
And here's a hack to that. I know we're almost out of time, but here's a hack to that. Show people. Stop using just the marketing, beautiful colors and beautiful fonts and things show people from your company. People connect to people. So the more you're showing the people side of what your company does, the more you're going to have more success on that becoming your brand and also people connecting to you.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll leave with everyone, what you want to do with your brand is you want to, spark that interest, invite discovery, establish, a memorable experience, and then also too, that trustworthiness, that reliability, because once you capture that mindset, it's very difficult to lose it unless you do something. And we'll give you a rebranding that actually failed, and you might know where I'm going to go with this, is New Coke. And you had a company that was, at the top of everything when it came to the soda wars, and they rebranded to New Coke, and it was an absolute disaster. So you have to be careful. To your point, rebranding can be, but you got to put a lot of research, due diligence, and do a lot of, peer groups, do a lot of that type of testing before you go and rebrand, because you could put yourself in a worse situation by rebranding.
Right. Yeah. You don't need to rebrand just because. Usually there's a reason, but be careful, as Jim said, because it could go really bad. Or another real quick one, a really bad one was Porsche. Like 10 years ago, they tried to come out with a minivan. And everyone's like, the Porsche audience doesn't buy minivans. And now they finally fixed it, and they've got an SUV, the Porsche Cayenne. And so it's starting to work. But that was a big thing. Like, pay attention to who your audience is and what they're going to relate to for your brand.
Perfect. Hey, Matt, how can the viewers get in contact with you? Social media, websites, LinkedIn, and any way they can get in contact with you or learn more?
Definitely. So I make it easy. At Mohawk Matt Denny, everywhere. That's LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Venmo. You can Venmo me. Gmail. It's at Mohawk Matt Denny, everywhere, and that'll get you to my websites. That'll get you to anything that we have. Get you in touch with us. That's best way to reach me. Or Google Mohawk Matt. You'll usually find me that way too.
Awesome. I encourage everyone to check out Matt and take a look at what he does, and also to follow his content and make sure you like it, you share it, and you also comment back to him, because the dialogues you'll have with Matt are absolutely outstanding and amazing. Matt, thank you for this opportunity to have a conversation with you, and you have a great day.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. Be awesome, everyone.
I hope you found value with today's Build Out broadcast. Make sure you connect with Jim on LinkedIn and subscribe to his YouTube channel. This way you'll be notified on new live streams and when new content is released. Please give today's broadcast a like and share with your connections and colleagues. Thanks for watching, and please visit buildoutproductions.com for additional content and to join the mailing list so you can keep updated on other streams and quality content from the creators on the Build Out Productions team.